so much as male admirers. Now, you don't suppose hoop petticoats are looked upon with favour by the masculine eyesight. You surely can't imagine there is a metal more attractive to a man in half a ton of crinoline than in nature's flesh and blood, unsurrounded by steel armour. Whether as a waltzer or as a husband, a man likes a woman he can take to his arms. And how is this possible when she is entrenched in an impregnable hoop petticoat, which when he approaches, he breaks his shin against?
Before we dance again, the gentleman needs some further instructions on behavior in the ballroom. From the Complete Practical Guide to the Art of Dancing, published in New York in 1863. Etiquette for the gentleman: loud conversation, profanity, stamping the feet, writing on the wall, smoking tobacco, and spitting or throwing anything on the floor are strictly forbidden. The practice of chewing tobacco and spitting on the floor is not only nauseous to ladies, but it's injurious to our dresses. Gentlemen who possess self-respect will surely not be guilty of such conduct. Our last dance for this time period is the Danish dance. This is a dance in 3 different sections. The first one is a promenade position where we're both moving in the same direction. Then it's followed by a gallop, which you all recognize, and then another bit which is a dance called the schottische, which is a jumping up and down dance, and we do lots of variations with that. It's a lot of fun, it takes a lot of breath, but we enjoy doing it, and so the Danish dance.
Well, thank you so much, Nancy and Jeff. You have taught us so much, not only just about dance, but about fashion and etiquette as well. It has been a real education for us. We've got some questions for you from our studio audience, but we want to start off with Stephanie Bush. Stephanie represents the Scranton Cultural Center, where we are standing. Stephanie, tell us a little bit about the center, and then you fire away with the first question for Nancy and Jeff.
Sure. Housed in this impressive architectural structure is actually the Scranton Cultural Center, which is a regional arts center. So we have arts, education, and community programming for the public. The building was designed in the 1920s and by a famous architect named Raymond Hood. So we actually have 2 stages and a grand ballroom downstairs. It was one of the first ballrooms in the area. We're happy to have the Pennsylvania Humanities Council to provide programming for the community and to always have our doors open, which is our main mission. So now I'd like to ask a question, if that's okay. Jeff and Nancy, my first question would be, how does contemporary dance of today compare to social dance that we'll be talking about tonight?
That's a very good question, because one of the things that we've discovered as we research dance is the similarities of human movement which feeds through into modern dance. So there's a progression always. And what we see is that from many of the historical dances, for example, if we take a dance called the Allemande has something in it which we would call around the world in swing. So we see elements of all of the historical dances being pulled in. And of course, the waltz that we did a little bit earlier, that has survived over the centuries. And we've got different kinds of waltz. We've got the Viennese waltz, which is continuous turning, and we've got the modern waltz, which is much more of a box step and very little amounts of turning. So they all contribute from the past, they feed forward into contemporary dance of today.
Hi, my question is, there seems to be a lot of skill with this type of dance, and at what age would someone at this time period begin to learn? And would they take classes, or something they would be taught by their parents?
I love this question. In this time period, dancing was an extremely important social skill for especially the middle to upper classes. If you didn't know how to dance, you didn't progress up the social ladder, and you didn't marry into the best families, which was your main goal. So to learn how to dance, they went to dancing masters, and there were hundreds in this country and in Europe. And they would start basically when you were about 4 or 5 years old, and you would just keep going until you were still an adult. Adults still took classes. They wanted to keep up with the latest things. So if you went to a dancing master, you'd not only learn how to do your dance steps, how to do ballroom holds, but that was also the place to learn about etiquette, how to do a bow, how to do a proper courtesy, how to enter a room, how to leave a room. Hundreds and hundreds of rules that everyone had to know, and it started in the dance school.
And we have paintings showing just these kinds of scenes where the mother is sitting with the baby on her lap, and just next to her is a young boy watching his father actually learn to dance a particular step with the dancing master, and they would then go and have their little lesson, and they would copy what their parents were doing. And this really comes all the way through into the dances that we're doing today.
I'd like to ask you, how did the social status influence the dance?
I'd like to answer that question going back a little bit earlier in a time period, back to King Louis XIV of 17th century France, because he's the one who really got dance on a firm basis, which spread throughout the world and even into the New World. I think if it wasn't for Louis XIV, who really wanted to get dance down to a fine science, he called in 13 most eminent dancing masters, had a room set aside at his court, and said, I want you to sort dancing out. I want you to sort out all the dance positions, the dance steps, make it all even, work out the dances that we know so that they're nice and clean, and then you'll train other dancing masters and we'll have a set system. And this was called the French noble style of dance, which other dancing masters then came to learn because it was a beautiful system to learn. They then took it off to their respective countries, and it was a big calling card for a dancing master. Just learn from France, the latest French noble style. You know, basically get it here because I have it. And that was something that everyone wanted to learn, how everyone was dancing at the French court. So then progressing from there, because we have such a set system from the high courts, then it just progressed into the other dances that came throughout the other centuries. But Louis XIV and his courtiers setting the standards, I think, was the one to do it all.
Nancy and Jeff, I have a question for you. I'm interested to know how you have been able to recreate the dances that you perform for the program.
Fortunately for this time period, we have hundreds of dance manuals that were written. They were mainly for the people of the middle classes who were trying to rise to the upper classes. They never had the training because they couldn't afford it. Now they see themselves going up the social ladder and they need some training very quickly. So here are all these manuals that they can refer back to. So the dance manuals are brilliant because they talk about the dance positions, the dance steps, and choreographies that we can recreate. But it doesn't just stop and start with dance manuals. We have to look at the whole picture. It's like being a detective, recreating these dances. So the next thing I'll look at is etiquette manuals to see what was happening, how we enter, leave a ballroom, other rules. I also sometimes go to museums and look at the fashion archives because what you wear really affects the way you move. So I want to try to get the clothing right so we do move and stand in the proper ways. And
other sources to find out about the dances are from newspaper clippings. The obvious sources, the National Archive and the Library of Congress. Natural sources online is covered with these kinds of things. But also personal diaries personalize these kinds of things and allow us to bring the kinds of things that we're talking about. For example, who knows that Woodrow Wilson actually banned the turkey trot, which you're going to see a little bit later on. He banned it because he didn't want people coming to the ball and being frivolous and doing all these wild dances. So he needed an act of Congress to be passed so that he could have a reception instead of an inaugural ball.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm so interested in the way that Nancy and Jeff have been able to connect the past with the present. As I listened to them, I thought about how the more things change, the more things stay the same. We thought that while Nancy and Jeff were doing a quick costume change, you might like to take a look at some of the wonderful items that they brought with them to really help further our education about the social dances of the past. So, for example, we've got this wonderful top hat, and the neat thing about this hat is that it mechanically collapses to fit into its box. And so we thought you might enjoy seeing something like that. The other thing that a well-dressed gentleman would wear to a ball was his pocket watch. And they happened to bring one along from 1915. Amazing and amazingly well preserved. And then, of course, for the ladies, a beautiful pair of dancing shoes. These shoes date back to around the 1860s, and they are incredibly well preserved. And then for every lady who wanted to be in the know about fashion, about etiquette, about the dances of the day, maybe to read current poetry, to get love advice and that sort of thing. There were magazines back then too, you know, and here's an example of one of them. Again, incredibly well preserved, dates back to about 1867, but you could think of it as sort of the Good Housekeeping magazine of its day. So again, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Finally, we've got this corset. It looks rather uncomfortable, but apparently that was something that the ladies of the day wore and somehow were able to dance in as well. So we extend special thanks to Nancy and Jeff for not only performing for us and giving us such a wonderful history, but actually showing us some authentic items of those times from the mid-1800s going up into the early 1900s to really give us a sense and once again to connect the past with the present. So having said all that, we've got much more for you for Humanities on the Road. May I have the pleasure of this dance. Please join me once again as we welcome Nancy Walker and Jeff Savage.
It is now the turn of the 20th century, a time of fun, optimism, and the emergence of new music and dance forms. Colonel Teddy Roosevelt and his Rough Riders have stormed San Juan Heights. He has become President of the United States, and a stuffed bear toy has been named after him. Rudolph Valentino has set the world on fire with the tango and taken the female hearts by storm. Scott Joplin has composed Maple Leaf Rag and The Entertainer. Novelty is the norm with ragtime music and animal dances. John Philip Sousa, known as the March King, composed over 100 marches with such familiar titles as Liberty Bell, the Washington Post March, and a celebration of the end of the Spanish-American War, Stars and Stripes Forever.